Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. Really excited to be going on a little virtual field trip to the Ripley's Aquarium of Canada in Toronto, Ontario, here in Canada. We are joined today by Danielle Couson, who's going to be our host for today. We're also joined by aquarist Melanie Warren, and she works on enrichment activities with the green sea turtles at the aquarium. Today we're going to learn a little bit about the green sea turtles, probably some of their ecology, their habits, and the like. We get to see them in action, and then we'll get a chance to ask some questions that Danielle will be ready to take for us. So Danielle, it's so great to have you joining us today. We have classrooms from all across North America, and we're really excited.
Amazing. I hope you guys are excited. It's Turtle Thursday, so we are going to be talking about the green sea turtle. Here at Ripley's Aquarium of Canada, we have two. So I'm about to introduce a very special guest. So this is one of our two green sea turtles. Her name is Spot. And if you can notice kind of on her neck area, there is a spot. So that's partly one of the reasons why she got her name. Joining me here is also Mel. So she is an aquarist here, like an aquarium biologist, and she works very closely with our green sea turtles. So Mel is here feeding Spot. It's her lunchtime. And if you can take a look into the water, you'll see there's a gray PCV pipe, and on the bottom, there's a target. So Mel's just going to pull it out right there. So you can see nice and closely this yellow target, and that is part of Spot's enrichment. And when she sees this target, she knows that means it's feeding time. And Mel will just drop her food right into the water because sea turtles have very sharp, almost beak-like mouths with serrated jaws, and this allows her to crunch her food very nicely. So today, I'm just going to show you what Spot is getting for lunch. So something very unique to green sea turtles is they are herbivores. So they mainly eat a vegetarian diet. So in the wild, they would eat things like algae and seagrass, mainly when they're adults. When they're young, they still do eat a little bit of animals like crustaceans and worms and things like that. So they're more omnivores when they're young, and then they are herbivores as they grow older. So here we have some romaine lettuce that Spot will eat, and it looks like she's also getting some sweet potato, some carrots, green pepper, and then like I said, she does get a little bit of fish there, so there's capelin in there as well, because Spot we think is about 20 years old, so that's pretty young for a green sea turtle because they can live up to 80 years old. They're very, very long-lived creatures. Now, the green sea turtle, there are 7 species of sea turtle. The green sea turtle is the second largest. The first one is the leatherback, and they can grow to 1 meter long and weigh anywhere from 250 to 400 pounds. And we think Spot is just over 200 pounds. So she's quite heavy, but she does have a lot of growing to do still, so she is still fairly young. And now, so the green sea turtle, a lot of people think they're called this because of the color of their shell. Their shell is also called a carapace, the fancy word for saying shell. But if you take a look at her shell, it's all sorts of colors, different browns and grays. They can sometimes be black and have different patterns. So it's not the color of the shell that they get their name, but it's actually the color of their fat. So underneath her shell, they have a greenish colored fat, and that's why the green sea turtle is called green. And that's most likely partly due to their herbivorous diet. So they're eating lots of seagrass and algae, things that are green. What else? So we have our 2 green sea turtles here are female, and you might be wondering how we can tell the difference between the females and the males. So some things to look out for. You'll see they have a little tail at the back. So on a male sea turtle, this tail is a lot longer. You'll see, if you can see there, Spot has a short little tail, but on the males, they have a much longer tail. And on their front flippers, the males, they do have a little claw, if you can see where I'm pointing here. But again, on the males, that will be a lot more pronounced or a lot bigger. So those are some ways we can tell. And the male sea turtle actually, unlike the female, they never leave the water. So sea turtles are related to land turtles, but they completely live in the water unless it's the breeding season. So the females do in the wild, they come up onto beaches to lay eggs since they are a reptile. Now, this usually happens at night, and females will walk up onto the beaches, and sometimes they swim great lengths to go return to the beaches where they were born to lay their eggs. And they use their hind flippers, so her flippers at the back, she uses those to dig a nest, and sometimes it can be about 1 meter deep, and then she'll lay up to about 100 eggs, and this is called a clutch. And then she'll bury them again using her hind flippers, and she will walk back to the beach, and that is all she has to do. So sea turtles don't take care of their babies. And about 60 days later, after the eggs have incubated on the beach, those little hatchlings will have to find their way out and move to the water. Now, oh, there she goes. So the green sea turtle, and actually most green sea turtles, unfortunately are a little bit endangered in the wild. So they're on the endangered list, and there is a few different reasons for that. One of them is due to habitat loss. So as I just said, these turtles come onto beaches to lay eggs, and sometimes we ruin beaches by building on them, or just overpopulated, so they no longer have places to nest. And some other issues that these sea turtles are facing is they get trapped in fishing nets, and sometimes their shells and their eggs are hunted and used for food or for making different kind of jewelry or ornaments. So they are facing a lot of issues, but as we know, we also have, us humans, we do have the chance to help out and make sure that our animals, like the green sea turtle, stick around for many future generations. So some things that you guys can do, even if you don't live anywhere near green sea turtles, although they are found in most of our oceans, is just make sure that you are reducing your waste. So plastic in particular takes a very, very long time to break down, and it's often found in our oceans, and our turtles sometimes get tangled in it, or they eat it and they mistake it for food. So once you have some waste, just make sure you put it in the right bin. You're recycling, or remember those 3 R's that I'm sure you all know: reduce, reuse, recycle. So just keep those types of things in mind, so we make sure that our sea turtles are nice and protected. So as we see here, Spot has a big appetite. She's just getting some fish now. All these little fish here trying to steal her food. Another really cool thing about the green sea turtle that I forgot to mention is the eggs. So the gender of their eggs, or their hatchlings, are actually determined by the temperature. So in the nest, if it's a colder temperature, then it's most likely that the eggs and the baby turtles will be formed into males or boys. And if it's a little bit warmer, hotter temperature, the eggs will most likely be all girls or females. So that's a pretty interesting thing. And that's for all sea turtles and turtles in general. The temperature determines whether it's a male or a female. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the green sea turtle here. And I would love to hear some of your thoughts and questions. We can open it up for that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. Really neat to watch Spot doing her thing. And you mentioned the visual cue. It sounds like there's an auditory cue as well. She's listening for that little click.
Yes. Oh, and I did forget to mention and show you. So what we're looking at here, this is the acclimation pool and if you see that out there, that's going out to Dangerous Lagoon, which is one of our largest tanks. So Spot usually is swimming around out there. There's sharks, there's rays, all sorts of fish out there. So we bring Spot back here to feed. So we actually have this little bell And we would just bring this under the water back in this area so that she can hear and know to come back here for feeding. So that is another part of her enrichment, the target, and then also the bell sound and the click. She can associate that with feeding.
All right, very cool. Well, we do have some great classrooms joining us, so let's start meeting them. I do want to give a quick shout out. Where's my list? There we go. A quick shout out to Mrs. Escamilla's class, some kindergartners hanging out with us from San Antonio, Texas. And I believe their camera's working, so give a big wave, San Antonio. There they are.
Hi, guys.
All right, so they're going to type their questions to us because their microphone's acting up today, but I'll keep an eye out for them. So let's meet our first live classroom. Let's go to Mrs. Alexander's grade 1 class. They're hanging out with us from Brighton, Ontario. Let me get their microphone turned on. How are we doing, grade 1? All right, who's got a question?
Do you like how do you see turtles stay away from prey? How do they get away from prey when they're so slow when they're so slow?
Are you wondering how they get away from predators because they're so slow?
Oh, good question.
Cool.
So, believe it or not, I know most of the time sea turtles do move fairly slow, but if you noticed her strong, big, paddle-like front flippers and hind flippers, they can actually swim pretty fast when they need to. They're very strong. They're excellent swimmers. Not so much for on land. When they have to come out of the beach, they are pretty slow and ungraceful, but they are actually very good swimmers. And they have that hard shell, the hard carapace, so that's a really good form of protection. They aren't able to hide in their shell like tortoises on land, but it still provides that thick protection from predators. And especially the green sea turtle here, you can see all her patterns and colors on her shell. So she may actually also be able to camouflage in some habitats to try and kind of hide and blend in from predators.
All right, great question to start us off. And Mrs. Escamilla's class has already sent me a question via the chat sidebar, and it builds on the one that was just asked. So why is it that sea turtles always seem to be moving so slowly? Is there a reason for that? Does it help them in any way?
Good question. Let's see if Mel has any input. So the question was, why do sea turtles seem to always be moving very slowly?
Usually when you see them, they're kind of grazing on food, so they don't need to be moving fast to do that. It conserves energy if they don't need to be moving fast. Why would you?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just repeat that if you didn't hear. So normally when we see green sea turtles or sea turtles, they are kind of shallow water, which typically is where they feed. So they're in their kind of grazing mode or getting their food. So to try and conserve energy, they don't need to be moving fast, so they won't. So only really when they're trying to get away from predators would they swim faster. But they want to try and save as much energy as they can for things like eating. So they just move slowly if they don't have to move fast.
All right, awesome. Let's jump to our next live classroom. Let's see. Mrs. Wiki has some grade 3s hanging out with us in Wrightstown, Wisconsin. Let me get their microphone turned on. How are we doing, Wisconsin?
Good.
All right, who's up?
Are carbon anemone turtles extinct?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Are carbon anemone turtles extinct?
Carbon anemone turtles extinct. Sorry, what? Can you repeat the name of the turtle?
Carbon anemone.
Sounds like he's saying carbon enemy.
Carbon anemone turtle. I don't know if I've ever heard of that turtle, but is that a land turtle? Because there's no sea turtle.
Yeah. Okay. Turtle.
All right. Well, I think you have a mission then.
Yeah, we might have to look to Google for that one.
Yeah, and that can Mrs. Wiki's class can also Google that and see if they can track down the answer to that question. All right. We'll swing back to your classroom in a moment, but let's jump to another class. Let's go to Brampton, Ontario this time with some grade 4s, hanging out with Mrs. DeBazy. Let me turn her microphone on. And actually, it's just off of my screen, so Brampton, if you don't mind just turning your microphone on for me, and then say hi, and you can go ahead and ask a question. It's right at the top. If you just click it, it should go from red to white. Looks like a little microphone. Okay, so their microphone's a little quiet, Danielle, but I got it. And he's wondering about the shell of the sea turtle. Does it grow with the sea turtle?
Yes, so it does grow with the sea turtle. It won't fall off, and they can't. So unlike a hermit crab who has to go find their shell, the sea turtle grows it. So as soon as they're born, little tiny little hatchlings, they have their shell, and it'll grow with them. And their shell is actually made out of the same material as our fingernails. So it's a protein called keratin, and that's what it's made out of, and it'll grow with them.
All right, great question from Brampton. Let's go now. Let's see, Mrs. Jacobs' group is joining us from San Antonio, Texas as well, some grade 5 students. And I believe I've got your microphone. I'll turn it on here. How are we doing, grade 5s?
Great.
All right, we're ready. Nice and loud.
How much do turtles eat in a year? The sea turtles.
Good question. So Mel, how often or how much does Spot eat in one day?
So she eats every day. It's 1.5% of her body weight. So it's about 3 pounds of vegetables and just under a pound of fish.
Okay, so Spot here eats every day, and we feed her about 1.5% of her body weight. So that equals about, she gets 3 pounds of vegetables and 1 pound of fish every day.
All right, and if we extrapolate that out to a year, that's about 1,400 pounds of food. So that's a lot of food.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Thanks for that question. Let's go. Mrs. Nordberg's class, grade 4-5s, hanging out with us in Rainy River, Ontario. Now, you guys were nice enough to jump to the bottom of the list for us, so I'll just need you to turn on your microphone for me. We'll steal a question. There they are. How's it going? All right, hit us with a question.
Do they have dolphins there?
No, we don't have any dolphins or whales or mammals here at the aquarium, only fish, and then our reptiles are 2 turtles. To have mammals in captivity, you need a lot of space, and we just don't have the space here. And things like whales and dolphins are very intelligent animals, and they like to live in large groups. So again, it would just be a little bit trickier to have them in captivity.
All right, so we're going to jump now. Where are we going now? We are going to Sudbury, Ontario. We have a group of students hanging out with Mrs. Moore right now. Let me get their microphone turned on. How's everyone doing in Sudbury?
Good. Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Perfect. We have Hunter here with a question.
When did turtles become alive? Like which year?
Ooh, good question. I'm gonna ask Mel because I forget on the top of my head right now. But when did turtles first, or sea turtles first evolve on Earth? Do you know?
They're relatively old. I don't want to say they're dinosaurs. But they've been around for a long time. I couldn't tell you exactly when.
So we're not sure the exact time period. I'm not quite as old as the dinosaurs, but they definitely have been on Earth for millions of years.
All right. I'm just going to do a quick Google check here for us.
Yes. that might be a good idea.
All right. So according to scientists, sea turtles come from land turtles and freshwater turtles that lived 230 million years ago. So
Okay.
originally, turtles were land turtles, and then the oldest fossil of a sea turtle looks like it's from the Triassic period.
Okay.
All right. Very cool. Good question. Let's see. Let me just double check to make sure we have no YouTube. Okay. And then let me make sure we visit all our live classrooms. We don't want to miss anybody before we swing back through. So it looks like we've talked to everybody. So let's start hitting a few classrooms for some follow-up. Let's do it in a little bit different order this time. Let's start with Mrs. Nordberg's group. If you guys want to turn your microphone on again if you have another question.
Where do you guys put turtles? Where do turtles go? I was recording that. How many turtles do you think you could hold in your aquarium?
How many turtles can we hold in our aquarium?
We're going to do more than 2. They can get territorial and aggressive with one another if you have more.
So we have 2 green sea turtles here. They're both female. We wouldn't want to have too many more, at least in this habitat, because sea turtles can actually be territorial. So it might induce some aggressive behavior, so we wouldn't want that. So I think just the 2 is good for us here.
All right, and it looked like she was just getting a little brush. Is that does she like the stimulation, or is that to keep her clean as well?
So why are you brushing Spot, Mel?
So turtles naturally will kind of rub on things in the wild to rub off parasites, excess skin or whatever. They don't have as much opportunity to do that here, so we do with the scrub brush. She's also got some skin issues right now, which makes her a little itchy, so trying to relieve it a bit more.
Okay. Yeah, so we, as you saw, Mel was scrubbing Spot. So in the wild, sea turtles or turtles like to kind of rub against different materials. So we kind of stimulate that process with the scrub brush. This will just kind of relieve any itchiness or any kind of parasites or anything that might be growing on her carapace.
All right, Mrs. DeVazy's class, if you want to turn your microphone on one more time for me, we'll steal a question. I see lots of hands, so there's definitely a question out there. You just have to get really close for me. Oh, can you try that again? I turned the aquarium volume down really low so I could hear you.
Are tortoises faster on land or turtles?
Okay. Danielle, they're wondering about tortoises and turtles, and if you know which is faster on land. We know sea turtles definitely aren't fast, but do you know between tortoises and turtles?
They're both pretty slow moving animals. I'm not 100% sure. I think it would be kind of species specific, because some tortoises have like really, really big shells, which I would assume would slow them down a little bit more than, let's say, like a smaller painted turtle or something like that. But again, they are both very slow moving creatures as it is.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's a tricky question because there's so many different kinds of tortoises and turtles, and they're all different sizes. So I think it just depends on which turtle or tortoise you put up against the other.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Mrs. Ricky's class, your microphone is back on if you have another question.
Do sea turtles ever leave the coral reef?
Good question. So, well, the green sea turtle specifically tends to live kind of in shallower coastal areas because that's where most of their food is. So like the seagrass beds and the algae on the coral reefs. But sea turtles go through very, very long migrations across the ocean, especially during their mating or when it's time for them to lay their eggs. So they often return back to their natal beaches, and that just means they swim all the way back to the beach where they were born to lay their eggs. And sometimes that'll be all the way across the ocean. So they definitely do go through large migrations, kind of like birds do.
All right, great question. Mrs. Moore's class, your microphone's on again if you guys have another question.
Yeah, I have Gabriel here with another question. Go ahead, Gabe. Why does the temperature affect the gender of the eggs?
Oh, that's a good question. So scientists think, or they found, it's a genetic piece that determines the temperature determination. Let's see if Mel might know a little bit more about that. So why does the temperature determine the gender of the eggs? Okay. Yeah, I think that's something scientists are still trying to figure out. They don't know 100%, but I believe they do believe it's something with their genetics.
All right, and that's the best thing about science is we don't know all the answers yet. There's so many questions left to answer, to explore, discover, and potentially that's a career path you could take to learn a little bit more about turtles. And actually, there's a few other reptiles that have that same adaptation. So it'll be a very fun topic to research and try to find the exact answer. Let's see, Mrs. Jacobs' class, the grade 5s, if you guys want to turn your microphone on, we'll take another question. Actually, I can reach yours, so I'll turn it on. There we go. You're ready.
If there was 2 days and one was hot and one was cold, would that affect? Would there be two types of genders and one egg, like that one female turtle laid? Like, would there be two genders?
Sorry, I'm not sure I heard that clearly.
So she's wondering if the temperatures were a little different in one part of the nest than the other. Could you have some of both?
Yes, that definitely does happen. So it's honestly the slightest little change. I think it's about, like, males are favored around 26 degrees Celsius and females are around 30. And then somewhere in between around 27 degrees, you'd get like a 50-50. But definitely the placement in the nest would make a difference. So somewhere around the edges might be a little bit cooler, so you'd get more males, and then in the middle it could be warmer and you get more females. So that definitely, and same with how deep it is. So eggs near the bottom might be a little bit cooler and eggs near the top would be warmer, and that would determine the gender as well.
All right, great question. Mrs. Escamilla's class, if you have another question, don't forget to send it in to us via the chat sidebar. But I don't think we've visited Mrs. Alexander's class again, so let me get their microphone on and go ahead with the question.
Do sharks spit out turtle shells, or do they eat?
All right, Danielle, in case you missed that, he's wondering, when a shark eats a turtle, does it eat the shell too?
Ooh, so Mel, when a shark eats a turtle, do they eat the shell or would they spit out the shell?
I think they would probably spit it out eventually.
Yeah, so we think they would probably spit out the shell. We know our sharks here aren't a huge fan of bones found in fish, so probably same thing for the turtle. They would just want the meaty part and not the hard shell.
Yeah, and we do some events sometimes from a sea turtle hospital in the Florida Keys, and they have lots of turtles at the hospital that are missing flippers and such, because sometimes sharks just take a bite from the flipper, and then the sea turtle is still able to survive and go about its business. So I think if they can avoid it, I don't think they love those hard parts. All right, really good question. Let's see, scanning through our list. I think we visited every classroom twice. If I'm wrong, wave like crazy at the camera, but I think we visited every classroom twice. And I have another question from Mrs. Escamilla's class, and they're wondering, they sent it in via the text. Oh, how long does it take the turtle eggs to hatch once they've been laid?
Good question. So it's a little bit, again, species specific. For the green sea turtle, I believe it's about 2 months that they're incubated. But again, temperature does play a role. So if it tends to be a little bit warmer, that might speed up the process and the eggs would hatch sooner versus being a little bit colder. It might take a little bit longer. So depending on the species, it's anywhere between, like, could be as early as 40 days upwards. But it does take at least a month, if not more.
All right. Well, first of all, classrooms, thank you so much for the awesome questions. It's always great to have you tuning in and hanging out with us. We love our Ripley's Aquarium hangouts. We always get to see really neat things, go behind the scenes, see the animals being fed. It's a ton of fun. Later in the month, we're going to have another event, and we're going to see the nurse sharks and the sandbar sharks be fed. So we're really looking forward to that at the end of the month. You check out exploringbythesea.com. You can find when that's going to be. And then Mel and Danielle, and of course Spot, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. That was a ton of fun. I think we learned a lot about turtles, and it was so great to get to see that enrichment activity right up and close.
Awesome. Yes, thanks guys for your great questions. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new about sea turtles.
All right, the last thing we'll do is we'll turn the microphones on. Boys and girls, get nice and loud if you want to say goodbye and thank you. And hopefully Spot can hear you as well. So here we go. Microphones are coming on. Go ahead, boys and girls, nice and loud. Goodbye and thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Excellent job. Always. Thank you again so much for Ripley's Aquarium, and we'll see everybody next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks guys.